Hey class, sorry for the delay. On my way to campus, I wandered into a space-time rift and kinda ended up in another world. There was this whole demon lord mess that I had to take care of while I was there before they'd let me go back. But at least it gave me an idea for today's lecture. Today we're talking isekai. Isekai is a kind of story that's been pretty popular in anime and manga lately, where the protagonist is transported to another world. It's a great way to incorporate exposition into a story about a fantasy world without it feeling forced, but it might also be kind of lazy in that regard. Isekai isn't limited to just anime. The Wizard of Oz, The Chronicles of Narnia, and Alice in Wonderland also fit the definition. Now, I'm not going to do a huge deep dive into the history of isekai or the concept as a narrative device. A whole lot of other YouTubers have done that job way better than I could. What I am going to do is I'm going to give you some stats about the genre. Now, if I want to do stats about isekai, I had to start gathering data. Starting off, I decided to limit myself to isekai anime. The number of isekai light novels, manga, and so on are way too big to count, and since I was entering this data by hand on my day off, I wanted to keep my sample relatively small. I limited myself to anime that had a set air date, so anime that were announced but haven't been given an air date, like Reincarnated as a Sword, were out. I went to Anime Planet's Isekai tag and grabbed some basic info for every series. I grabbed the title, the year the anime started airing, the source material that the anime was based on, the type of other world it took place in, the year the source material was first published, how the protagonist got to that new world, and if the protagonist was reincarnated, how they died. I figured the last one would be good for some truck-kun jokes. Now, apparently Anime Planet doesn't consider immersive VR experiences isekai, so Sword Art Online and That Mom Isekai don't count. I also can't promise that I got every single isekai that's ever aired. I was just relying on that pre-existing list. I've linked my dataset and the code I used to analyze it in the description of this video if you want to add to it or do your own analyses. So, this was a pretty exploratory thing. I didn't have any hypotheses, so I'm just going to be reporting descriptives here and showing you some graphs. First off, I collected data on 88 different isekai anime, all the way from Aura Battler Dubin in 1983 to The Executioner in Her Way of Life, which will be airing sometime this year. 2021 had the most new isekai anime with a total of 16. 1983, 1994, 2001, 2003, 2007, and 2012 had the least with only one each, but that's not counting years that didn't have any. I'd say our first isekai boom started in 2001 with 11 new isekai shows consistently airing between 2001 and 2007. New isekai shows took a 3-year break between 2008 and 2010 and came back with a vengeance in 2011. The number of new isekai per season has been trending roughly upwards ever since. You can see a dip in 2020, probably due to production delays from the virus. That may also explain this huge spike in 2021 because the shows that were delayed were now being broadcast. Now for that last bar, not all the numbers are in for 2022 yet, so that bar may go up. Most of the source material was published between 2012 and 2016. Before that, there weren't many isekai stories being published, and after that, things fall off because the amount of time it takes for a series to get an anime is long enough that we probably aren't going to see some of these more recent isekai light novels getting adapted anytime soon. On average, it took about 5 years between a story's first publication and the first episode of its anime adaptation, with a standard deviation of about 3 years. That's one of the reasons source material falls off after 2016 in this graph, while the anime keeps going strong. Again, source material published after 2016 probably hasn't had time to be adapted yet. The newest isekai stories to have a release date for their anime adaptations are Tensei Shoyakara Musabori H and Reincarnated into Demon King Eve Logica's World. Their source material was first released in 2020, and their anime will be airing sometime this year. Most isekai anime, a total of 53, came from light novels to the surprise of exactly no one. 13 were anime originals, 12 were from manga, And the least popular origins were full novels and webcomics with only one anime adaptation each. I couldn't verify the source material for Chojiku Romanesque Sammy or Rainbow Mountain, so those aren't included here. Now we can get into the actual contents of the story. First, how did our protagonist get to this new world? Well, despite all the titles that include reincarnation, protagonists were most commonly summoned to the new world, like the leading trio in Magic Knight Ray Earth, or stumbled into it somehow like Subaru from ReZero. 18 were reincarnated, like Tanya in the saga The Tanya the Evil, or So I'm a Spider, So What. 2 were cases of reverse isekai where the protagonist came from a different world into our world, and 1 was a case of body swapping. In other words, the protagonist's consciousness swapped consciousnesses with somebody else in a different world. The whole reincarnation boom is pretty recent. The first source material I found that included a reincarnation aspect was published in 2009, and the first isekai anime adaptation to include reincarnation aired in 2017. Up until that point, it was almost exclusively being transported to the other world, with 1 case of body swap and 1 case of reverse isekai. Now about that reincarnation. Well, I mean, to be reincarnated, you kind of need to die. That's part of the package. Now, we all know that the number 1 deadliest force in Isekai isn't the Demon King or any of their minions, it's Truck-kun. But does the data bear that out? Kinda. Starting off, there were only 18 cases of reincarnation, which didn't leave a lot of wiggle room. There was 1 weird case, and that was Kazuma from Konosuba. He was transported to another world because he died, but it wasn't a case of reincarnation. The goddess Aqua brought him back to life and plopped him in another world as himself. So that's 19 different deaths. Out of those 19, traffic accidents are definitely the most common cause of death by a large margin. That includes Truck-kun, car crashes, and just generally getting run over, though not necessarily by a truck. The second most common cause of death is a tie between dying from exhaustion or dying in their sleep, with 2 examples each. Then we have sundry other deaths, and 1 case, Catalina Kleiss from My Next Life as a Villainess, whose cause of death I couldn't find for the life of me. Please drop it in the comments if you know. Anyway, that's it for Isekai Stats. I hope that all of you are doing well and getting some rest whenever you can. Make sure to leave any of your questions, comments, or concerns in the comments section, and make sure to look both ways before crossing the street. Class dismissed!